Switchblade first opens, you are presented with a blank screen. If you're using a USB to MIDI interface, be sure it is connected and the driver installed before starting Windblade. If you are using a Switchblade 8F, you also have the option of connecting with just a USB cable. When the USB is connected, the red USB dot will illuminate. If you are connecting to a Switchblade through MIDI, then be sure you select the MIDI input and MIDI output port from the port menu, which will then light the MIDI in and out dots. At this point, you can select Tools, Pull for Switchblades, and Windblade will search for Switchblades on both the USB and MIDI ports and list what it finds in the status bar. Note that at this time the current Switchblade says none, as we have not yet picked the Switchblade to work on, and for this same reason the online status will say offline. The program uses the Switchblade's MIDI channel to identify which Switchblade to talk to. Select File, New, to begin the session. A dialog will open up that will allow you to select which Switchblade you are working with. From the pull-down menu, I will select the Switchblade 8F for this lesson. Press the New button and the work surface will open, along with a new dialog. This dialog allows you to create the names for all the inputs and outputs on the Switchblade, and these are shown as two columns of edit boxes. These are the names that show up on the LCD screen on the Switchblade if you create presets from the Switchblade front panel. I'll fill in the names from my current setup. A few things should be pointed out when naming inputs and outputs. Notice I named input 1 guitar and output 1 and 2 the left and right amp of my stereo setup. Simple enough. For input and output 3, I have a heavy metal effect connected, and I gave the input and output both the same name, in this case metal. It is not necessary to name one side differently from the other, as the Switchblade knows the inputs from the outputs and will keep things sorted out for you. I've repeated adding effects to inputs and outputs 4, 5, 6, and 7 as mono effects. The last effect, the echo, is a mono-in, stereo-out device and uses 3 connections to the Switchblade. For this effect, I've connected the left output to input 2 and the right output to input 8 as these jacks were available. The input to the effect was connected to output 8. I've called the 2 inputs different names, echo left and echo right, to identify the 2 inputs separately when programming from the front panel, and the output is just simply called echo. These names just entered are really only for the benefit of the Switchblade and don't have anything to do with the icons that actually appear on the work surface, but all gear that is connected to the Switchblade must have a name and so must be entered in this dialog. Now we will create all of the icons that represent your instruments, amps, and effects, which are used to create presets on the work surface. To create an icon, first press New Icon, then check the inputs and outputs that you want to be part of that icon. To start, I will select the guitar input to create an icon with just a single connection point, as shown in the center of this dialog. I will then name this icon Guitar, and the name you type here is a label to help you identify the icon when it appears on the work surface. I will now create 2 more icons, one for amp left and one for amp right. I will create an icon for the heavy metal that has both an input and an output node by checking metal on both the input and output side, and you can see that this icon now has 2 nodes attached to it. I'll create icons for the EQ, compressor, tube screamer, and metal zone the same way. Finally, I'll create an icon for the echo, and this will differ from all the others as it will have 2 input nodes and 1 output node. I'll call this icon Echo. You can review your icons by using the icon scroll buttons. When you are satisfied, click the OK button to close the dialog and download all the input and output names to the Switchblade. All of the icons you have just created will appear in the sandbox on the right side of the screen, ready to drag to the work surface to create presets. That concludes this lesson. In the next lesson, you will learn how to create presets.